Are you feeling ignored or disrespected by your children, despite all the love and care you gave them growing up? Do you find yourself wondering, where did I go wrong? It's painful to feel like your relationship with your children is slipping away, but here's the truth. Reacting with anger or sinking into sadness won't fix the problem. What if there were simple, powerful actions you could take to regain your peace, dignity, and even the respect you deserve, all without causing conflict? In today's video, I'm sharing 8 proven, thoughtful steps you can start right now to repair your relationship with your children while preserving your emotional well-being. These insights have helped many elderly parents rebuild broken relationships, and they can help you too. You'll learn how to reflect calmly instead of reacting in anger, how finding a new purpose can make you more respected and admired, and how setting healthy boundaries can transform your family dynamics. By the end of this video, you'll know how to communicate your feelings wisely, lead by example, and create a fulfilling life, independent of your children's approval. So, if you're ready to restore your dignity and rebuild stronger, healthier connections with your children, make sure to watch until the end. Your worth is timeless, and the steps you take today can change your future for the better. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Insight number 1. Don't react in anger. Pause and reflect. There are moments in life when the pain of feeling disrespected by those we've loved and nurtured is unbearable. It's a hurt that seems to sink deep into our hearts, a silent ache that lingers, especially when it comes from the very people we've invested so much of ourselves in. As parents, we sacrifice so much for our children, pouring out our energy, our love, and our wisdom, all in the hopes that they'll grow to appreciate it. And yet, when the time comes, when we find ourselves being neglected or dismissed by them, it's all too easy to let the sting of betrayal trigger our emotions. It's almost instinctive, that overwhelming urge to shout, to demand, "How could you treat me this way after everything I've done for you?" But let me tell you, my friend, acting on that anger will only make things worse. It will never bring the understanding you seek, nor the respect you deserve. Take Mr. Tanaka, a retired school teacher in his 70s, whose story touched my heart deeply. His children, whom he had poured his life into, rarely visited him. And when they did, the conversations were hollow, strained, and full of indifference. After one too many unanswered calls, Mr. Tanaka felt his frustration rise like a boiling pot, ready to spill over. He wanted to call his son, scream into the phone, and ask, "Do you even care about me anymore?" But in that raw moment of anger, something remarkable happened. Mr. Tanaka stopped himself. Rather than giving in to his fury, he took a quiet walk in the park near his home. And as he walked, something profound occurred. Memories of his life, his years as a dedicated teacher, the sacrifices he made to give his children the best life he could, the laughter and warmth that once filled their home, flooded his mind. It was in that stillness, in that moment of peace, that he came to a life-changing realization. His worth wasn't defined by whether or not his children reached out to him. His value came from the life he had lived, the integrity he had maintained, and the kindness he had shown to others over the years. No, his dignity wasn't something his children could take away, no matter how distant they had become. What Mr. Tanaka's story teaches us is powerful. Emotional reactions rarely bring the resolution we crave. Anger often clouds our judgment and leads to more hurt. When we lash out, all we do is push people away. It doesn't matter who they are. It could be your children, your partner, or anyone close to you. In that moment, when you give in to anger, what you're doing is losing control of the situation and giving up your dignity. But when you take a step back, when you breathe and allow yourself to reflect, you tap into a strength that can't be taken from you. You remind yourself that you are more than the treatment you receive from others. You're not defined by how others act toward you, but by the love you've given and the life you've lived. And here's where the beauty lies. In that moment of pause, you regain control. You find your inner peace, and it's that peace that enables you to communicate more effectively and with more empathy. With time, that reflection may even lead to a healed relationship. The truth is, the anger that arises from feeling disrespected never truly serves us. It only brings division. When we pause and reflect, we remind ourselves of our worth, our integrity, and our love. We become a beacon of calm, capable of bridging gaps and finding resolution, not through fury, but through clarity. So remember, when life feels unfair, when you feel pushed aside by those you've cared for, pause. Don't act out of anger. Take a deep breath and reflect. Your dignity and your self-worth don't depend on others' actions. They're yours to keep, and no one can take them from you. Insight number 2. Rebuild your own life. Find new purpose. One of the most transformative actions you can take when you feel neglected or ignored by your children is to shift your focus back to the most important person in your life, yourself. So often, we fall into the trap of waiting for their calls, waiting for their approval, waiting for them to notice that we need them. But the truth is, if you remain in that space of waiting and longing, you'll find yourself trapped in an emotional cycle that only leaves you feeling more unseen, more isolated. It's time to break free from that cycle. The most empowering thing you can do in moments like these is to stop waiting for your children's attention or validation, and instead, reclaim your life. Rebuild it. Find a new purpose that fills you with passion and meaning. When you start living a life that is fulfilled, your energy shifts. It's subtle at first, but undeniable. The change within you becomes so profound that it cannot go unnoticed by those around you, including your children. Think about it. A parent who radiates joy, confidence, and independence is a force that commands respect and admiration. A parent who is not solely defined by their role as a caregiver, but instead is thriving in their own right, becomes a figure of strength and inspiration, a person who can't be ignored. Take, for example, the heartwarming story of Mrs. Elena, a widow in her late 60s. When her beloved husband passed away, something heartbreaking happened. Her children, who once filled her days with visits and calls, gradually began to withdraw. Their calls grew shorter, visits became rare, and soon, the phone stopped ringing altogether. At first, Mrs. Elena was devastated. It felt like she was losing her family all over again, and she spent countless days sitting by the phone, staring at it, hoping for it to ring, longing for the connection that seemed to slip further away with each passing day. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. But one fateful morning, Elena reached a turning point. She felt a surge of strength. Maybe it was born from the grief, maybe it was from the loneliness that had finally cracked her heart wide open. Whatever it was, she made a decision that would change her life. She was done waiting. She grabbed a packet of seeds from her cupboard, stepped into her garden, and began planting. At first, it was nothing more than a simple hobby, a distraction to ease her mind. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, that garden became so much more. It wasn't just flowers and vegetables, it was her lifeline. Gardening gave her purpose. It gave her peace. She joined a local gardening club, where she met new friends who shared her passion. The joy she found in tending to the earth and sharing the fruits of her labor with neighbors filled her with a vibrant energy she hadn't felt in years. Elena changed. She became a woman who radiated happiness, health, and vitality. She was no longer the woman waiting for the phone to ring. She was the woman who was fully alive, fully engaged with the world around her. And do you know what happened next? One day, out of the blue, her daughter called. "Mom," she said, her voice soft but full of curiosity, "I've been thinking about you lately. You sound so happy. What's your secret?" It was a simple question, but it carried so much weight. That phone call was the first of many. It sparked deeper visits, longer conversations, and a rekindled connection between Elena and her children. They no longer saw her as someone sitting in the background, waiting for their attention. They saw her as someone with her own life, her boys, and her sense of purpose. And that is the key takeaway here. A fulfilled parent is harder to ignore. When you live with purpose, when your life is full of passion and joy, people are naturally drawn to you. Not because you're demanding their attention, but because you exude an energy that invites connection. So instead of sitting idly by, waiting for your children to come around, take action. Invest in yourself. Pursue the things that bring you joy. Join local groups. Volunteer. Make a difference in your community. The happiness and fulfillment you find within yourself will not only bring you inner peace, but it may also bring your children closer to you. It's not about seeking validation from others. It's about permitting yourself to live fully, to honor your worth. In doing so, you may find that your children see you in a whole new light, not as someone clinging to their attention, but as someone who has always been strong, capable, and deserving of love, admiration, and respect. The change begins with you. Rebuild your life, and watch how it transforms everything around you. Insight number 3. Communicate your feelings wisely. When you feel your children drifting away or behaving in ways that feel disrespectful, it's only natural to feel hurt and frustrated. The pain can be overwhelming, and in those moments, it's easy to want to lash out, demand answers, and seek validation. The impulse might be to ask, "Why don't you ever call me? Have I done something wrong? Do you even care about me anymore?" But as tempting as it may be, these words, spoken in anger or pain, often only serve to drive the distance even further. Instead of fostering understanding, they put up walls that make it harder to reconnect. It's so important to remember that how we communicate in these emotionally charged moments can either heal or harm the relationship. If we communicate with anger, the response is often defensiveness, and the emotional gap only widens. But if we choose our words with love, with vulnerability, the door to deeper connection is opened. Take, for instance, the story of Mr. Peterson, a retired carpenter who had always been there for his son, James, through thick and thin. Yet, over the months, James had become increasingly distant. The silence in their relationship hurt Mr. Peterson more than he could put into words. Every day, he sat by the window, waiting for his son to pull into the driveway, hoping for a simple call or visit. But all he had were his memories of the days when they used to talk for hours, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments. The emptiness of the silence was like a weight pressing down on his chest. Every passing day that James didn't call felt like a betrayal, and the frustration built inside him like a storm. At times, Mr. Peterson thought about calling James and confronting him. "Why haven't you called? What's going on? Don't you care about me anymore?" he thought. But in those quiet moments of reflection, he realized that blaming James might only make things worse. The last thing he wanted was to push his son further away. So Mr. Peterson took a deep breath, cleared his mind, and chose a different path, a path of understanding, patience, and love. Instead of raising his voice or confronting James with bitterness, Mr. Peterson sat down at his kitchen table and wrote a letter, his hand trembling slightly as he expressed his feelings. The letter was filled with warmth and compassion, without a trace of blame. He wrote, "James, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I miss our conversations. I miss hearing about your life. I miss the connection we used to share. I just want you to know that I am always here for you, no matter what. I'm so proud of the man you've become, and I will always love you, no matter the distance between us." When James read the letter, it touched him deeply in a way he wasn't prepared for. He had been so wrapped up in the demands of work and family life that he hadn't even realized how much his father longed for his presence. He hadn't understood how the silence affected Mr. Peterson, how his absence left a hole in his father's heart. The letter made him pause, made him reflect, and filled him with a renewed sense of love and responsibility. A few days later, James called his father, his voice thick with emotion. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much you missed me. I've been so busy, but I'm here now. I want to make things right." From that moment on, regular phone calls became a part of their routine, and weekend visits that had been absent for years were rekindled. What had once seemed like an unbridgeable gap was now filled with understanding, connection, and love. The lesson here is so powerful, and one I've learned through my own experiences. Words hold immense power, especially in relationships that matter the most. Instead of resorting to blame or criticism, take a moment to express how you feel with honesty and gentleness. Let your children know that you miss them and that you long for the bond you once shared, rather than making them feel guilty or accused. When you choose your words wisely, when you speak from a place of love and vulnerability, you invite them to open their hearts in return. Communication, when done with kindness and care, becomes the bridge that reconnects hearts, heals wounds, and strengthens relationships. I truly believe that no matter the age or circumstance, we can always repair the bond with our children through thoughtful, loving communication. It may not always be easy, and it may take time, but if we stay true to our emotions and communicate them with empathy, we can rebuild what was once broken. It's never too late to reconnect, to remind our loved ones that no matter how much time or distance has passed, we are here, waiting with open arms. Insight number 4. Set healthy boundaries. Respect, I truly believe, is a two-way street. It's not just about wanting your children to respect you. It's about you respecting yourself, too. We often pour so much love, energy, and care into our families, especially as we grow older, hoping they will return that affection in kind. But here's the painful truth. If you constantly allow disrespect to linger in your life, you send a message that it's okay to treat you poorly. And that, my friends, can slowly chip away at your sense of self-worth. If you don't stand up for yourself, who will? By setting healthy boundaries, you not only safeguard your peace of mind but also teach others how to treat you. It's a powerful, yet often hard, act of self-love. Take the story of Mrs. Rosa, for instance. A retired nurse in her 70s, Mrs. Rosa had always been there for her son, Daniel. She gave him all she had, her time, her support, her heart. But over the years, Daniel's behavior became more demanding and more entitled. He stopped visiting unless he needed something, a loan, help with his children, or simply someone to vent his frustrations to. Mrs. Rosa, ever the loving mother, dropped everything at his beck and call, hoping that one day he would recognize her sacrifices and appreciate her more. But instead, Daniel's requests became almost unbearable. He would show up uninvited, expecting her to babysit for hours without asking, without even a thank you in sight. It broke her heart every time she gave in. One day, after yet another unreasonable demand, Mrs. Rosa reached her breaking point. She realized that if she didn't start standing up for herself, she would lose herself in the process. So she took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and gently but firmly said, "Daniel, I love you, but I'm not available today. I've made plans for myself." That moment, that single sentence, was a revelation, not just for Daniel, but for Mrs. Rosa too. She didn't apologize. She didn't feel guilty. She simply honored her own needs, and in doing so, she began reclaiming her life. At first, Daniel was shocked. He was annoyed, even frustrated. How dare his mother not be at his disposal, just like she always had been. But Mrs. Rosa didn't waver. She didn't have to guilt. Instead, she shifted her focus from endlessly serving others to nurturing her well-being. She joined a local book club, started attending yoga classes, and reconnected with old friends she hadn't seen in years. She found joy in her own company, and that was more than just an escape. It was a rediscovery of herself. As time went on, Daniel saw the shift. He realized that his mother wasn't just waiting around for him to call anymore. She wasn't rearranging her entire life to accommodate his demands. It didn't take long before he started treating her with more respect, and even more importantly, he began to see the selfishness in his actions. Mrs. Rosa's boundaries not only helped her regain her dignity but also shifted the balance in their relationship. She had stopped being the person who gave endlessly without asking for anything in return. By choosing to respect herself, she showed Daniel the importance of giving and receiving respect in equal measure. The lesson here is one that I feel deeply. Respect must go both ways. You deserve to be treated with kindness, with consideration, with love. But that respect begins with you. It starts with valuing your own time, your energy, and most importantly, your emotional health. Setting boundaries doesn't mean pushing your children away or being cold. It means valuing yourself enough to say no when you need to. When you show that respect to yourself, you teach others to do the same. It's not just a lesson for your children. It's a lesson for life. Insight number 5. Lead by example. It's so easy to want respect from others, especially from those closest to us, like our children. We often expect them to show us the same courtesy and regard we've always given them. But the hard truth is, that respect doesn't just appear because we demand it. It's something we must earn. And far too often, the way we earn it is through our actions, through showing others what respect looks like, even when it feels like they're not reciprocating. If you want your children to treat you with respect, the key isn't yelling, nagging, or trying to force their behavior. It's leading by example. It's about showing them, through every word, every gesture, and every moment of interaction, how respect is truly given. You might not always see immediate results, but the ripple effect of your actions can be more powerful than you realize. When you treat others, especially your children, with kindness, patience, and grace, even when they don't deserve it, you are teaching them a lesson that words alone could never convey. This is a lesson in love, dignity, and emotional maturity that will shape their behavior, even if it takes time. Take, for example, the story of Mr. Lorenzo, a retired factory worker who had given so much of his life to his family. Mr. Lorenzo had 5 grandchildren, and as he grew older, he began to notice something that broke his heart. His adult children, who once seemed so eager to visit and spend time with him, began to fade away, gradually visiting less and less. When they did show up, they were often more interested in their phones than in their father. It was painful, it stung deeply, and like any parent or grandparent, he could have reacted with anger, disappointment, or a sense of betrayal. But that wasn't the path he chose. Mr. Lorenzo could have turned bitter, lashing out or giving them silent treatment, but instead, he chose the harder path, the path of grace. He continued to treat his children with warmth, love, and respect, even when they didn't offer it back. The very thing that could have driven him to anger became his opportunity to teach. Each time they visited, no matter how brief, he welcomed them with open arms, saying, "It's so good to see you," his smile radiating kindness. Even when they arrived with little to offer in return, he didn't let the pain of their absence consume him. Instead, he asked about their lives with sincere interest, listening attentively, offering advice when they asked, and never once did he bring up their hurtful behavior. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Perhaps the most poignant moment came when his children forgot his birthday, something that most people might have seen as the final straw. But not Mr. Lorenzo. He didn't let it harden his heart. Instead, he sent a simple message: "I hope you're all doing well. I miss you." His forgiveness was gentle but firm, and it spoke louder than any argument ever could. What happened next wasn't immediate, but it was profound. Slowly, his children began to notice the quiet dignity he carried. They saw how, even in his loneliness and disappointment, he still chose kindness. His actions, his patience, and his refusal to give in to resentment worked like a seed planted deep in the hearts of his children. Over time, they started visiting more frequently, calling more often, and even bringing their children to spend time with him. Mr. Lorenzo's respectful, unwavering love became an example they could no longer ignore. This story is a beautiful reminder that respect is contagious. It's not something that can be forced or manipulated. It's something that grows naturally when we show others how to treat us by treating them with the same respect we desire. It might not always happen right away, but the seeds of kindness, when planted with consistency, will eventually bloom. When you choose to lead by example, you're not just changing the way you're treated. You're creating a culture of respect that can echo for generations. So, instead of demanding respect, give it freely. Show your children how to act by being the example they need, even when it's hard. When you embody respect in everything you do, whether it's a smile, a kind word, or a thoughtful gesture, it becomes something that can't be ignored. It's a lesson that will stay with them for years to come, a testament to your unwavering commitment to love and respect, no matter the circumstances. Insight number 6. Stay financially independent. As we age, many things naturally shift in our lives, but one of the most important, yet often overlooked, aspects is the ability to remain financially independent. It's easy to assume that our children will take care of us when the time comes, and while that may be true in some circumstances, placing the full burden of our financial well-being on them can create unspoken tensions, stress, and even resentment. I've seen it firsthand in so many families. Children, despite their best intentions, struggling with the weight of their parents' financial dependency. It can become a silent source of strain. On the other hand, financial independence is not just a practical solution. It's a powerful expression of dignity and respect. When we, as older adults, maintain control over our finances, we project strength. We show our children that we are capable, self-sufficient individuals. We don't want them to see us as helpless or constantly needing their assistance. Instead, we want them to look at us as people who've weathered the storms of life and come out stronger, as role models who demonstrate how to navigate aging with grace and wisdom. That level of independence demands respect in a way that nothing else can. It sends the message that we respect ourselves enough to handle our affairs, and that, in turn, naturally encourages our children to treat us with that same respect. Let me share the story of Mr. and Mrs. Carter, a retired couple in their 70s who truly embody this principle. When they retired, they faced the reality of living on a fixed income, like many retirees. Rather than simply relying on their children or hoping for a windfall, they made a conscious decision to downsize their home. They opted for a simpler, more manageable lifestyle, one that would allow them to live comfortably without falling into the trap of excessive spending or mounting debt. They budgeted meticulously, always keeping track of their expenses and adjusting when necessary. The Carters made their retirement savings work for them, and they never once asked their children for financial help or support. At first, their children were skeptical. They couldn't fully grasp the extent of their parents' careful planning. But over time, something remarkable happened. The Carters never complained about their finances and never expressed worry about the future. They exuded calm and control. Their children, once unsure, began to see their parents in a new light. They saw how their mother and father handled their finances with poise, how they took full responsibility for their own lives without burdening anyone else. Slowly but surely, their children started to seek out their advice on budgeting, saving, and planning for retirement. It wasn't long before the respect they had for their parents grew immensely, not because of demands or expectations, but because their parents had set an example. They didn't ask for help, they showed their children how to live with wisdom and foresight. This story is a powerful reminder of the importance of financial independence in later years. It's not just about money. It's about maintaining your dignity and ensuring you never become a burden on those you love. Of course, we all face moments when we need a little help, and there's no shame in asking when it's necessary. But striving for independence is key. It's about making the effort to manage your affairs to the best of your ability. When your children witness this level of self-reliance, they will not only respect you, they'll feel more comfortable offering their love and support without feeling obligated or pressured. Financial independence isn't just about managing your budget. It's about sending a message to your family. You are capable, you are strong, and you are worthy of their admiration and respect. You've lived a full life, and as you enter this next chapter, you want to do so on your terms, with dignity and self-respect intact. That's a legacy your children will cherish, and one that will guide them as they navigate their paths. Insight number 7. Forgive, but don't forget your worth. When your children hurt you, whether through ignoring you or showing blatant disrespect, it's a deep and painful wound. In those moments, forgiveness feels almost impossible. But let me tell you, it is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. Holding on to resentment, anger, or bitterness can weigh you down in ways you never imagined. It eats away at your peace and keeps you chained to the past, preventing you from living fully in the present. Forgiveness, however, has the incredible ability to free your heart. It allows you to release the burden of pain and move forward, not for their sake, but for your peace of mind. And trust me when I say this, forgiveness is not an act of weakness, it's an act of strength. But here's where many people get it wrong. When we forgive, we often feel as though we need to forget our worth, as if forgiveness means we should allow others to continue treating us poorly. Let me make this clear. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you should erase your self-respect. You can let go of the anger and the hurt while still holding on to the knowledge that you deserve to be treated with dignity and care. You can forgive, but you should never, ever forget your inherent worth. Take Mrs. Evelyn, for example. A retired artist, she poured her heart and soul into raising her 2 children, giving them everything she could. But as time passed, her daughter, Claire, began to drift away. The calls became less frequent, and the visits were non-existent. Evelyn, who had given so much of herself, felt abandoned and rejected. She found herself questioning, what did I do wrong? Did I fail her in some way? That aching question gnawed at her for months, and the weight of that neglect made her feel invisible, as though her value had been forgotten by the one person she held most dear. But one day, after months of carrying the burden of hurt, Evelyn made a choice that transformed her life. She sat down and wrote her daughter a letter. The words were simple, but they were liberating. I forgive you for the distance between us, and I'll always love you. But in that quiet, powerful moment, Evelyn also decided to reclaim her own life. She would no longer be defined by the neglect of others. Instead of staying trapped in the painful cycle of waiting for her daughter's attention, she picked up her paintbrushes. For the first time in years, Evelyn began to paint again. She poured herself into her art, something that had always given her joy. She joined a local art group, attended community events, and found happiness in expressing herself. She filled her life with colors, creativity, and a deep sense of personal fulfillment. Months passed, and Claire came to visit, surprised to find her mother in such a different place. Happy, vibrant, and living her life on her terms. Mom, you've been painting again? Why didn't you tell me? Claire asked, her eyes wide with emotion. Evelyn, with a smile that radiated peace, simply replied, I've been focusing on what brings me joy. That simple yet profound response spoke volumes. It was a moment of quiet strength and independence that Claire couldn't help but admire. From that point on, their relationship began to heal, not because Claire felt guilty, but because she saw her mother for who she truly was, a woman who was no longer defined by the actions or inactions of others but by her worth and choices. The lesson here is a powerful one. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It's about letting go of the past and moving forward with a light heart. But it is never a call to shrink your value. You are deserving of respect, love, and kindness, no matter how others may treat you. Forgive the past, yes, but never let it take away the knowledge that your worth is inherent, unshakable, and not dependent on anyone's actions. Live with dignity, pursue the things that bring you joy, and always, always remember that your value comes from within, not from how others treat you. Insight number 8. Build a new circle of companionship. Loneliness can be one of the deepest, most soul-crushing experiences we face, especially when it comes from feeling invisible, ignored, or disrespected by those we love most, our children. The pain of realizing that the very people you have devoted your life to are now too busy, too distant, or too emotionally unavailable to offer you the support you need can feel unbearable. And when you're left standing in the emptiness of your own home, longing for a conversation or a warm gesture, it's easy to start relying on your children to fill that void, to meet your emotional needs, hoping that they will somehow return the care you've so generously given them. But what happens when they can't, or won't? Emotional dependence on your children can lead to feelings of deep frustration, sadness, and eventually resentment. The burden of needing them so much, and yet not getting what you need, can slowly eat away at your heart. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. This is precisely why it's crucial, necessary, to build a new circle of companionship. We cannot put all of our emotional well-being into the hands of one group, especially when they are not able to meet those needs consistently. Instead, it's empowering to expand your world by seeking out new relationships. These connections could be with friends, neighbors, or even people you meet through a community group. When you open yourself to new faces, new conversations, and new experiences, you can begin to ease the pain of neglect, fill the gap that loneliness has created, and most importantly, create a fulfilling social life that is rich with connection and shared joy. Take, for example, Mr. Harold, a widowed man in his 80s, whose story tugs at the heartstrings. For years, Harold leaned on his son and daughter for the companionship and emotional support he craved. After all, they were his flesh and blood, the people he had poured so much of himself into. But as the years went on, his children became increasingly absorbed in their own busy lives. Visits became shorter, calls became less frequent, and the emotional connection he once had with them slowly unraveled. The pain of isolation crept in, and soon Harold was spending days on end in his empty house, feeling the heavy weight of loneliness. Then, something incredible happened. After a particularly painful week of solitude, Harold, feeling a glimmer of hope he hadn't felt in months, decided to join a local seniors club. The uncertainty in his heart was overwhelming. What if no one there would understand him? What if it would only deepen his sense of rejection? But despite his doubts, Harold took that leap. And to his utter surprise, things began to change in ways he never imagined. He discovered that every week, a small group gathered for coffee at the clubhouse. There was a monthly book club where people shared not just books, but ideas, dreams, and laughter. There was even a group that went for peaceful walks in the park, bonding over the simple joys of nature. Harold found himself looking forward to these moments, marking them in his calendar with a smile. His new circle of friends didn't just pass the time, they became a lifeline. Harold began to share laughter and stories, and even formed a tight-knit group with a few of them, going on day trips together. Over time, he realized something powerful. He had started to rely on his friends for emotional fulfillment, not his children. Yes, he still loved them, yes, he still missed their visits, but the emptiness he once felt no longer consumed him. He had found other ways to fill that space, ways that nurtured him in ways he didn't think possible. The lesson here is profoundly important. Loneliness doesn't just create isolation, it breeds emotional dependence. However, by building a vibrant, engaging social life, you free yourself from the expectation that your children, or anyone else, must be the sole source of your emotional support. In doing so, you can open yourself up to new sources of joy, laughter, and genuine companionship. This shift doesn't only improve your emotional well-being, but it can also enhance your relationship with your children, too. Without the weight of needing them to meet all your emotional needs, the relationship becomes healthier, more balanced, and less strained. Instead of resenting them for not fulfilling your desires, you embrace the fullness of your life with others, finding that your happiness does not depend on just one group of people, but on the wonderful connections you've chosen to cultivate around you. As we wrap up today's discussion, I want to ask you, what have you learned so far? From the power of building new relationships to filling the emotional void with a vibrant social life, It's clear that we can take control of our happiness and well-being at any stage of life. But now, I want to hear from you. What is one thing that resonated with you, something that you will take with you and start practicing in your own life? Let us know in the comments below this video. Your insights could help others as well. And if you enjoyed today's video, please leave a comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content that can help you live your best life in your golden years. I'll see you in the next video.